week we started talking about life begins at 60 because pretty soon I'm going to be 60, and I'd be darned if anyone's going to tell me I'm old. So last week we talked about how to keep your body young, and this week we're going to talk about your mind. And my guest is Dr. Gerald Larue, who's a professor, emeritus professor at USC, right?
That's correct.
Teaching aging and written more books than you can count?
Well, I can count them, but I don't bother.
Let's talk a little bit about the mind first of all, and how you keep it physically going, or how you keep it going as far as keeping it all connected and firing.
Well, there is the cliche that we have from the physical side of the aging process: use it or lose it. Mm-hmm. And there are those who would like to apply this to the keeping the mind alive and alert. There's no doubt that by being involved, thinking things through, working with the mind, can keep the mind alive. Now, what happens is somebody can't find their keys.
Right.
I have students who can't find their keys. I mean, this has nothing to do with aging. We have somebody who'll say, I can't remember somebody's name, and then an hour later they say, I've got it. Mm-hmm. The mind clicks in. We're discovering all kinds of things about our thinking process. I sit down to work at a crossword puzzle. Depends on the time of the day. Sometimes I'm in a better mood for it, and everything clicks. Another time I can't get a word that'll fit in, and I go back to it an hour later, and everything is, what's wrong with me? We are geared, some of us for morning people, some of us for evening people. Sometimes the medications we take kick in and slow us down. An hour later we might feel a little better. All of these things contribute.
But how long have you been teaching, Dr. Larue?
I've been teaching at SC for about 35 years.
Okay, now that's a long time to do anything, all right?
A third of a century.
A third of a century, all right. Now, have you noticed any changes in the way you approach teaching, and anything that you can relate to your own aging?
Yes, I am very, very conscious of making accommodations for the potential loss of an idea right at the moment. I've always done my lectures in full script. Not that I use them, but I have them there. And I still do that. I bring in a full script so that if I find myself not quite sure where I'm at, I've got it there in front of me. And of course, in a class as I teach on social and psychological aspects of death and dying, we can deviate. Somebody brings up something,
certainly,
and we're off the subject, and where'd I leave off? I can go back that way.
Right, you need your script. But you are able to deviate.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know what they're talking about, and you're on top of all of the issues of the day.
This is the exciting part of it. And the other exciting part is that the young people come in with their own particular angles of vision, their own particular questions that make me sometimes rethink what I think I know. Mm-hmm. So this is exciting. Mm-hmm. There is a stimulus involved in this. You talked about writing books. A lot of this comes out of what happens in the classroom.
Sure.
Things are generated there, and you say, I ought to do something about this. Go back to your computer and you start. Now, whether you ever finish or not.
Well, all right, you go back to your computer. There's this theory that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And you and I know that more seniors use computers than sometimes midlifers at this point.
That's true. We have a class that is taught by one of our young office workers for the seniors in our university volunteer group to use the internet, to use all the latest things on computer. Mm-hmm. And these older men and women come in there and they pick it up and go home and put it to use.
Is there some different way we use our minds as we get older, or does it have to do with the way we live? I mean, in other words, if we stop going to the office, if we stop being out in society, does that affect our thinking and our ability to put ideas together?
There's no question that the person who lives an isolated life, doesn't go have friends, doesn't have family, very seldom goes out, maybe to the grocery store and back, doesn't do anything except perhaps watch television, they are more in danger of losing the best aspects of their cognitive potential. On the other hand, people who are involved, and of course married people are better than single people at this, but people who are involved with family, with friends, doing things, and as you do, go out and talk to various groups, this is a thing that keeps the mind alive and alert and functioning. Unless, of course, we contract some dementia disease.
Right,
and that's
but that's why we started, with the physical. You have to build the foundation of aging by keeping your body in good shape.
Absolutely.
We have to take a commercial break. We'll be right talking with Dr. Gerald Larue, emeritus professor from USC, who teaches about aging. And we're talking about the mind. And what we want to talk about, and what we're going to get to, and we want your comments and questions, is how you keep your mind active after you get older, maybe after you retire, and how valuable your mind is to other people. I went and talked with a Newport Beach woman by the name of Betty Oddie, who had started all of the new NutraSweet franchises in Orange County. She retired, and she retired to volunteering. Let's hear her story.
The wonderful thing is it kind of opened up a lot of time for me so that I could do things that I wasn't able to do, and I guess I'm compulsive enough that I wanted to do everything, and so I think I'm busier than I was then. SCORE is a Service Corps of Retired Executives, and what we do is we help small business. We work closely with startups and people who are in small businesses, and we provide free counseling for them.
You didn't stop with SCORE. You started your own company, Business by Design.
Well,
now, what's that?
That was a consulting firm that I had started almost a couple of months right after I had left Nutrisystem full-time on a day-to-day basis. And it's a small consulting firm. And basically, I work with startups, and I call it startups, tune-ups, and growth.
In addition, though, to this, you have your own company, and you do a lot of volunteering. How much time do you spend volunteering, do you think, Betty?
Oh, gosh. I don't even have a clue. I do online counseling for SCORE, and I've spent 96 hours doing that since January alone, just the online counseling.
Online counseling.
So I would say SCORE in itself maybe takes 40 to 50 hours a month.
All right. Now, this seems like a real casual retirement, but you're still on the board of Nutrisystem.
Right, and I'm currently doing the marketing for Nutrisystems, and I work with the sales department, helping with the sales scripts and helping with writing of the promotions and that kind of thing, too.
Okay, now this is keeping three balls in the air at one time. Is this something that is an ability that comes with age, do you think?
Well, I think that's an interesting thing that you brought up, because I think that's one of the reasons I think women make really great middle managers, is because we are able to do many things at once. Mm-hmm. And the good news is we can do many things at once. The bad news is sometimes we have trouble focusing on one specific thing.
Well, we all can't be Betty Oddie, but I want you to know she didn't stop there. She started found out that there was a need for a cream, an alpha-hydroxy cream. She found a chemist, started a company to make the cream. She got together with somebody else and started a cosmetic company. And she volunteers with a nonprofit organization down in the South County that deals with children. That's an awful lot. That and the garden alone would keep me busy. Now, that's really using your mind, isn't it?
But there's another thing that I noticed with her, and that is the activity of the woman herself. There's the mind, body, spirit concept that comes out of Greek culture that is very, very important. And she is alert, she's alive, she's doing things, she's moving. Mm-hmm. She isn't sitting back in a rocking chair and not doing anything. This woman she's an activist, mm-hmm. and a wonderful role model in terms of the potential of using her, how many ever years she had been in business, to now do something else with it.
And she's helping businesses, young other people starting businesses, but you are writing a book right now about older people who are doing things with students. Now, right. Tell us about that.
The senior volunteers at the Andrus Center,
and that's at USC.
That's at USC, have a program that grew out of a concern for aging, which is the stereotyping of people, putting them in boxes and saying this is what it's like to be old. And so they went to the public school system and also to some private schools and said, we have older volunteers here who would like to come into your classroom and talk about aging. The program has been nothing but a success. They asked the students, the teachers, to have the students write out their concerns. And the fears that these young people have of the physical limitations, the mental limitations, the terrible decrepency that comes with age was startling. Now, there were others, of course, who had role models. I want to be like my grandmother, my grandfather, and so on. They're great people. So they go in there, and here they are, vital, interested, older people who have been in business, who've been teachers, who've done all these sorts of things, and now they're there in the classroom, and these children ask them questions, some very personal, everything from sex down to what do you do on Tuesdays. It's a wonderful program, and what they have discovered is that they can help these young people change their views about what it's like to be old. One young student drew a cartoon of kids kicking an older person in a wheelchair and saying, this is something we should never think of doing. We should never abuse the elderly. But I kept saying as I looked at the drawing, where did he get this image?
Where did he get the idea in the first place?
That's right.
That's frightening in a way.
So we have young people who say, I don't think I'll ever live to be 65.
This is true, yeah.
And I think I'll be killed, a bullet with my name on. All these cliches that are very frightening. I don't want to be like so-and-so. And so what I'm doing in the book, for instance, here's somebody who says, I live in Southern California, I love surfing, I won't be able to surf. We've got 90-year-olds who are surfing. And so
yeah.
we could do a corrective there, too.
So really what you're saying is that if you keep active, you not only benefit yourself, you benefit perhaps another generation.
Absolutely.
You still have a lot to give. We'll take another commercial break. We'll be right back. 1-800-225-5626. Thank you. We're talking with Dr. Gerald Larue, Emeritus Professor at USC, who teaches about aging. We're talking about the aging mind. And we've been looking at some tape that we were just, I think, the Martha Stewart of retirement, right? Betty Oddie. I mean, a woman who accomplished, it makes me feel like I don't do anything in my free time, you know? and she's so organized, and she's so cheerful, and she's so efficient. I think that's wonderful.
It's interesting because the organizational factor is a very important one. They argue that sometimes women, more than men, lose the spatial capabilities. She's proof that doesn't need to happen. But she's something else. She's got this mind-body dimension. And one of the things that we have discovered in terms of my course on Death and Dying is that people who are depressed and who lock themselves in tend to stay depressed. But if we can get them up and out, walking, looking at the flowers, seeing what other people are doing, then we can help the body, help the mind to deal with whatever the problem is. And we recommend this to our students, that when things seem to be coming in, everything's going, get out and walk a bit, and then go back to your work. Because there is a mind-body relationship that I think a healthy mind and a healthy body is a very real cliche, and it really has meaning.
Yeah, I think that too many people, when they get older, they get a little, well, we all get a little aches and pains. I have a couple little aches and pains once in a while, and it's a natural human instinct to say, oh, well, I don't feel like doing it, and then it just gets worse.
That's true.
I mean, it's harder to get started.
I get large numbers of occupational therapists in my class. And if they can get some of these people who think their arthritis is such that they can't move, just to take 3 steps, 5 times a day, then 4 steps, they begin to do something in the life of the person.
You know, you're talking a little bit about mind over matter, too.
Right.
I mean, in other words, telling yourself, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it.
The little engine that could, right.
The little engine that could. Quickly, I want to say, women do this a little bit better, this whole aging process, than men.
Well, yes, and we don't know why. Women live longer than men. The other thing is that I think women assimilate some aspects of aging better than men, and that is the group patterns.
They're more social, they're more outgoing.
Well, Steel Magnolias, which I think is a wonderful movie, have all these women with all their different attitudes, but there's a support factor there that's absolutely missing in the lives of many men. We don't have that kind of ability to cry on each other's shoulders and so on. Some do, but for the most part, we don't do that.
So that's good for the mind, too.
Oh, absolutely. This is part of the stimulus, and I think that women are better in this. I have friends who are on the phone all the time. That they're isolated because of physical conditions, but they're on the phone and they write letters. They're in touch.
They get on the computer.
And their mind is alive.
Okay, so there's no reason why you have to hide behind the years when you're dealing with your mind.
I hope not.
Okay, we have to take another commercial break. We'll be right back. We've been talking with Dr. Gerald Larue, USC Professor Emeritus, about aging and the aging brain and how smart you can still be even if you are 60. Now we're going to take a little time out with Register columnist Lucille DeVue.
1. Whenever I wear a special sweater, I remember when I flew to my mother's hospital bedside. I hugged her amid tangles of tubes. Frightened, I babbled, speaking too loud, too fast. She tugged lightly at one sleeve of the bright sweater I wore. Gaudy, isn't it, I asked. She kept tugging. I said, "You like it? I'll buy you one at the Penny's up the street." But Penny's had sold out. So I draped my sweater around my mother like a shawl. The bright colors bloomed like flowers atop her green hospital gown. She hugged one of the empty sleeves to her cheek. She died soon after. I wore the sweater to her funeral. In the car after, a sister asked me, "Why did Mother want your sweater?" I guessed that when she tenderly hugged the sleeve of my sweater to her cheek, she was hugging me, even as now I hugged her, pulling the sweater tight around me in the stifling heat of the car. This is Register columnist Lucille DeVue.
That's a lovely Mother's Day story from Lucille. And Dr. Larue, it also illustrates that even in the end, the mind is still working, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. One of the most interesting things that happened to me in terms of that kind of a situation, I was on the air in Pasadena on the radio with Mario Machado. And he had a program at 11:30 at night, and I said, "Who listens to the radio at 11:30? We had a phone call from a woman who said, "I never told my mother I loved her until it was too late." And I said, "What do you mean?" Well, she said that her mother was dying. She was sitting at the bedside holding her hand, and she poured out her heart as she never had before. And I said, "Was there any physical response?" She said, "I could feel my mother's hand tightening on mine." I was able to say to her that the last part of the brain to go is hearing, and that this could be her mother's, I didn't say it was, her mother's acceptance of this. What happened was absolutely startling. She shrieked, "Thank you, thank you." And it was like one of these echoes that go off into space. And Mario said, "What was all that about?" And I said, "This was a matter of closure." And this is what this woman's talking about, the closing of relationships. And this, by the way, is something that I talk to my young people about in the classes, as well as the older people, that you say to the people who matter to you, "I love you." And this comes out of wisdom. This is the wisdom again of age, saying, you don't leave undone these kind of statements, because you never know when you wish you had said them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you think that it's important that there's too much emphasis on Alzheimer's disease, and it's important to talk about the positive aspects of the brain and aging? You know, I mean,
Right.
I have done programs on Alzheimer's disease, and we talk about forgetfulness and all this kind of thing. But we're really not that forgetful, are we?
No, we're not. And the number of Alzheimer's, in terms of percentage, is small. It's a very serious disease, and it disrupts families.
Right.
It has all kinds of overtones that can be very upsetting. But nevertheless, this isn't everybody. And because I can't find my keys, doesn't mean I have Alzheimer's.
Right. And your message, of course, is use it or lose it.
Right.
Okay. I'm Jane Glenn Haas, and it's been our time. Please join me next week when my guest will be Malcolm Boyd, and we're going to talk about the spirit after 60.